Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to show you how to use a hand plane. And before you use a hand plane, remember, you always must wear a pair of safety glasses. You always have to wear some kind of eye protection while you're in my shop. So the first thing is safety glasses. Now, the next thing is you have to understand that, remember, the blade that we're going to use is super sharp. And when you take your hand plane, remember, do not put it down flat on the table, because if you nick this blade, it will not cut, or it will not cut well. So make sure that you understand that this thing is always going to be super sharp. And again, how sharp is it? It is so sharp that, believe me, you can just slice a piece of paper with no problem, just like that. Okay? Now, you're going to find that when you use a hand plane, it's very simple. The only adjustment you really need to make are two things. One is the lateral adjustment, which makes it go left and right. So if I come up here just to show you, you can see that the blade, let me just show you. If I adjust this little lever, it goes one way or the other. It's hard to see, but it goes up one or it goes onto the other side. It's like a little alignment. So that's the first thing you do. The next thing is you have this screw. And the screw, you turn it clockwise. Or in Spanish they call it tornillo, which is a screw. So you turn the screw derecha or izquierda. You turn it in one way or the other. So what you need to do is you turn the screws ever so slightly. Now, whenever you put the blade in here, a lot of times it will not cut. So you can feel that the blade is not sticking out, which is what we want. Now you can find that when you start cutting with the hand plane, that this thing is so sharp that it can actually cut thinner than a sheet of paper. Now this is a sheet of paper I have right here, and this can actually cut pieces of wood thinner than a sheet of paper. Now I'm going to show you in a minute what I mean. And by turning the screw ever so slightly, and what you do is you let it start on at the fore of your hand plane, and then you're going to go all the way through, just like that. Okay? You don't have to lift up. You can go all the way through, go back and forth. Now, of course, it's not cutting because I haven't turned the screw yet. But if I turn the screw just every little bit, it's going to start to cut. All right? We don't know yet because the blade's starting to come down, nice and slow. As it starts making the cut, it will start to come right through or eject right out. You can see how it starts to make these little curls. So I'm going to come right across, just like that, and right there you have that. That's how you start making the cut. Now you cut in terms of what we call thickness of paper. Now I'm going to cut something that's much thinner than a piece of paper. So let me give you a for instance. Here's a piece of paper, and here is a micrometer. This is a tool that measures the thickness of a piece of wood, so or anything. So I'm going to reset this thing back to 0. All right, and then you're going to measure it. So when we measure it, you can actually look at this, and it says right on top here, 0.006. All right, that's 6 hundredths. It's 10 hundredths, 6 100th of an inch. Okay, so I need to cut something less than 0.06. So what I do is, on my hand plane, and I know this thing is super sharp, I'm going to make some light adjustments. I'm not going to cut anything, but I'm going to cut it so that I'll cut a little bit, just a little bit, a little increment. Each one makes the cut. Okay, and there you have one thin piece right here. I'm going to cut it again to make it a little bit bigger. Now, this is what I want. So we measure this, and we have to go less than 0.06. So if I come up to you and measure it and show you, I hope this will come down to here. And here is my answer. Whoop, I'm trying to find the camera. And it says 0.03. So basically that's almost half the thinness of that piece of paper. So you can see that you can actually cut something very, very small, thinner than a sheet of paper. That's how fine that has to be, because the blade is super sharp. Now, when you're playing with a hand plane, remember, you just want to understand about thickness of paper. We do not want to cut more than 4 sheets of paper, because this is pretty thick. So what we do is we turn the screw a little bit, and you start with the 4, and you put it into your vise. Make sure your vise is nice and tight. It has to be tight because that's what's going to hold it. You put your shoulder in the back here, and you come all the way across, just like this, and go push all the way through. You don't have to lift up. And because of this chipper, the chipper has a little curve on here And that's what ejects it right up. So it's gonna look like this. So, just like that. Really, really nice and really, really smooth. It just cuts just like that. And you make shavings all across. Now, make sure that you either put your hand plane down on the side or on a piece of wood where the blade does not stick out. Now, on edge grain, it cuts all the way through. On face grain, you can go all the way across. Because in the old days, they used to make guitars, and the piece of wood had to be really super thin to make guitars or any type of violins. So you could also plane the face of a piece of wood. So let me tighten this up a little more. Okay, now how thin do I want it? It really depends on you. But you can see that it really does a nice job. It actually will cut it. Okay, I can make this super thin, like down to nothing. Or I can make it like, let me just show you. I can plane it down to this thin if I wanted to, all right? But I really don't. I don't need to waste all that wood. Okay, see how thin that is? Because in the old days, you need wood this size. So of course you have to plane it. Now, if you understand that the edge grain and the face grain are really the same because the longitudinal rates go the same exact way. But end grain is a little different. End grain is a little harder. So on end grain, you cannot go all the way through. Notice I went all the way through, okay, on my cuts. All right, but on end grain, what happens if you go all the way through? Now watch what happens because the wood is much harder. On end grain, you're not going to get shavings that look like this. Instead, what we're going to get is this. We're going to get really, really fine sawdust. All right, it looks like fine sawdust. So this is what you're going to get. Okay, it's a little different because the wood is much harder there. So you get either shavings or sawdust. On end grain, it is really, really hard. So what happens is you have to plane it very, very fine, but you can't go all the way through. Watch what happens if I go all the way through. If I go all the way through, I'm going to chip it right across. It's got a bad chip. All right, so if there's a bad chip, that's not good because that ruins your work. So on end grain, here's a little trick. You have to go halfway. Media. All right, think of the word media, half. So I go half, and then I have to turn my back towards you, but I try not to. Halfway in, okay? So this way it will never rip out on the other side. And again, a hand plane is really, really easy to work with. You need a real sharp tool. And of course, a hand plane will do a nice job. As you can see, it will cut nice shavings for you. And a hand plane is the only tool that can cut on all three sides of a piece of wood. The edge, the face, and the end grain of stock. And with that said, make sure that after you finish with it, make sure it's nice and clean. And make sure you put it down nice and gentle. Again, I'll put it on top of a piece of wood there. I elevate on the heel, and you can see that either heel or toe, you can put it either way or sideways because you don't have a piece of wood. And that is how you use a hand plane.